I know a lot of you are able to speak, multiple languages with your immediate family members. Have you ever noticed any kind of either generational gap or divide as far as language goes?
I mean, for me, it's because I grew up in China, so there wasn't a generational divide, but rather there is a different way to talk to your grandparents or your cousins who are younger. And I think that's the same way, I have realized that's the same way with a lot of different Asian languages as well. Like with Korean, there's a lot of language that you use for adults, for
the respectful speaking.
Yeah, the different types of speeches.
Yeah,
so not quite like a generational divide, but just different ways of approaching it.
For me, so I haven't gone back to Japan for 16 years. So it's not even a generational gap, it's more of a geographic gap. I just haven't gone back for so long. So, but I think your question really applies to my kids, I think. I thought to myself whether I would teach Japanese to my kid, if I can even. And there's so many interracial relationships out there as well. So, I mean, who knows? And I thought there is a possibility that my kid would be just purely American and he won't be able to speak, or she won't be able to speak Japanese. I'm not sure if I'm okay with that, but I still have to get back to you on that.
For me, whenever I visit my family overseas, which all of my immediate family besides my mom and dad, my brother, they're all overseas. And one thing that I feel very fortunate, but is also kind of an unfortunate thing, is that all of my family in Egypt, they all speak English perfectly fine. So I'm definitely able to communicate with them. Of course, there's a little bit, of miscommunication there. But then when I go to China, where hardly any of my family speaks another language except Chinese, that's when I definitely have a lot of trouble communicating with them, because sometimes I want to know what's the current slang, or I don't know because none of my family is near my age at all. They're all definitely grand uncles and aunties and stuff. So that's probably one thing. But it's also fun because I get to use a lot of facial expressions. Yeah.
So do you know the current slangs?
No. It's only stuff that I meet from international students.
So the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Well, for me, for the most part, I don't really notice a generation difference or gap, but it's just more based on age or so. I do notice that a lot of my older aunts and uncles, I do prefer speaking to them with whatever language they grew up with, say if it was Vietnamese or Cantonese. Hopefully for the most part is Vietnamese, just for my sake. But for my younger aunts and uncles, we prefer English. It's just easier to communicate, we know our slang, we're up to date with everything too. So it's just easier, just based on age. And when we talking about going back home, when I go back to Vietnam, I gotta make sure that I'm very up to date with how they speak Vietnamese back there. Say for example, if I call an uncle over here, in a specific way, they may call uncle something different over there. So yeah, I just gotta make sure that I'm really up to date and very proper too when I go back home. Or home.
Have you ever slipped up when you go?
Well, I mean, I remember when I went to Vietnam and I asked for hey, where's the bathroom? And they're like, what? What is that? I was like, the bathroom? Am I saying it wrong? Is my accent wrong? And then I ended up just saying oh, where's the toilet, right? And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, just go up these stairs. And then, yeah, so I think it's also geographically too, especially in Vietnam, they're north, south, and central, per region, they have different words for the same thing. So yeah.